Hello, this is Ashton, and today we're going to do some more PLSQL. As you can see, I have everything up and running already. Today we're going to talk about variable injections when you want to declare a variable, but you want to use a select statement to inject those variables. Let's go to, and also we'll go over exception blocks as well. So first thing I like to do is I like to grab my requirements. I kind of got the requirements preloaded here, and I'm going to correct this right here. I'm going to bring this down um, right here. So if you go through these requirements, the biggest requirements is declaring variables, okay? Using a begin block, which is a hint. Select statement to read a record into the declare variables. I call it injection. And so let's get started. So let's kind of clean this up a bit. Okay. So let's start out with our basic structure. Okay. So we know that we want to, let's go and set our server output. Server output on. Oops. And let's set our echo on. Let's set the page size. I would say, oops, about 20. Let's set the line size to 200. And let me scroll down a little bit. Let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, zoom in just a little bit so you can see everything. And then let's start out with our basic structure. So let's do this. Let's do the spool first. Let's do spool and we say test.log. And then let's do the spool and we're going to say off. Okay. And so we got the spool off, we got all of that. So now let's start with our declare block. So let's go declare and let's start with our begin and then let's do our end, and this right here is very important, okay? Otherwise it won't compile properly. That slash right there, that's saying that the program is ended because we're doing a on the fly procedure where it's only storing it enough to run the procedure instructions and not storing it into the Oracle database. Okay. So first, let's start off with how our data looks. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab one of my select statements, the select statement that I made, and so I have a pre-built select statement. So let's take this right here and let's pull this select statement apart. Let me make it look pretty a little bit too. And maybe I should do one of these. Go out a little bit. Okay. So now, this right here is our regular select statement. Okay. And let's do this. Let's do some test data, which is 114 right here. Okay. So this is our regular select statement. In order for us to do injection into our variables, before we do our from statement, we have to do an into. So I'm going to paste this back in. So into, and these are the variables. So department ID is going to go to rec department ID and so on and all in order. Okay. So now let's talk about declaring our variables. Since these are our variables right here, let's take this and we're going to put this in the declaration part. This is where we set our variables before the actual program runs. So let's paste this here. Let's clean it up a little bit. And let's remove some of our commas. So I'm gonna just do this. I don't want you waiting all day to see the concept. So right here, we know that, and this is really slick what I'm about to do. So we're gonna give it instructions to go to HR employees, and we're gonna take the department's ID type. This is where we declare type. Okay, so this is the variable name and this is the type. We can actually go to the database tables metadata and we put a percent sign and we tell it this is the type. Okay, So we can repeat that for the rest of these, but those commas got to go away. We have to put semicolons. Okay. So what we can do is we can take this right here. Let's take this and we can copy it on each line because I know you understand the concept by now. You see the pattern, and let's take this line by line. And what we're gonna do is let's go and take the actual columns that we want the metadata from. So we want employees to go on employees, first name to go to first name, and we want last name to go to last name, and we want salary to go to salary. So this is a dynamic way of getting your types. So what I'm gonna do is let's do it this way, where we automatically grab the types from the table, so we won't have any mapping issues or anything like that, and the compiler knows what to expect. Okay, so this is so we won't have to say number, varchar, and all of that. We let the table do the work. The metadata of the table do the work. Okay, so now this is that injection piece. Like I said, it injects it into these variables. Okay, so now that we got the data, let's talk about printing it out. Okay, so what we can do is we can just basically print the data out using our DBMS output. So what I'm gonna do is I already had this made up from an enhanced version that I made of this script, and what I do is move this over just a little bit. Okay, but we have to make changes because we want the actual variable. So this will be rec, this will be rec, this will be rec, and this right here will be rec, and this right here, whoops, we keep the two, sorry, autopilot, this will be rec. So let's talk about how we're using this output line. So this first line right here is if you just have a string. The second line is how you concatenate a string that you want and concatenate it with the variable name or some function that spits out output. So in this case, I'm doing a two-char in the format, and I want to format this number right here to have 6 digits. I'm expecting 6 digits, maximum 6 digits, so it formats it for me. Then right here I'm saying I'm expecting 6 digits. I leave the first name and last name, and then right here I actually want this to be currency, so I put the $sign, the commas, and whatever format I want the salary to be in. Okay, so let's run it. Let's make sure it runs. So let's go over to our PLSQL, SQL Plus, and then what I'm gonna do is I actually have it here, and let's give it a run. Okay, so look at that. It actually prints this out for us. That's the format that we wanted. Okay, so now one more piece. Let's talk about exceptions. Okay, so with exceptions, let's to test the exception, let's put something in here like a data point that we know there's not an employee ID of 1 in the table, and you can go back to the table and figure out what doesn't exist in the table. So the first thing we want to do is we want to say exception. Oops. And let's tell it when. So when, let's say no data found, which is a reserved word. So we go no data found. Then we tell it what we want it to do if no data is found. Okay. So what I wanted to do is I'm gonna keep it simple, and I'm gonna do this right here. Okay. So we got the no data found. All right. So now let's test it out. Let's see if 1 actually exists. Let's save it, and then let's go back over here, and let's run it again. And look at this, no data found. Okay. So after we do the no data found, we got one more thing. Let's kind of make this flexible. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a variable in that I never declared. And I expect the compiler to ask me what what the value of that variable should be. So in order to do that, you can do ampersand, and we just call it employee ID. Okay. So, oops, let me lowercase that. It really don't matter, but I'm gonna lowercase it just to stay in uniform. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is after I save it, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to run it. And if you notice right here, it asks me for the employee ID. So I can do a 114 and see that. And let's do this too. Let's do an exit. Let's clear this. Let's do a clear so you can see it a little bit better. And let's run it again. So see, so if I go and I put 1 in there, it says not found. But if I run it again and I put 34 in there, well, let's do 114 because we know that works, then see it's found. Okay. And that's it. Hopefully this video is helpful. You can play around with some of the source code I put out there. And one more thing, let's go and check the spool file. So if we go over and check that spool file, let me try to find it. Users, ashto, and then we have Oracle. And if we go over to here, because as I said in previous videos, it's about where you run that SQL plus. And here's the file right here. Okay. And that's it. Take care.